Hi friends, it's still feeling very upside down for the Jewish people, for Amchi Yisrael. It's hard to even sometimes speak when somebody asks you how you're doing. I've been saying I feel upside down. I feel upside down. I feel like the world's turned over in a lot of ways. And there's something that I found, a certain sense of comfort, a certain sense of connection to the larger body of the Jewish people, to Amchi Yisrael. Even using the term upside down, I was thinking there's only one place in the entire Torah that we have letters that are actually upside down, and that is in the 10th chapter of Bamidbar, of Numbers. We actually have letters that are upside down. If you open up a Torah, or if you open up even a Chumash, you can see that there are upside down letters in the 10th chapter of Bamidbar, in the 35th verse and the 36th verse, which have special significance. Will be familiar to nearly all of our listeners. And in these upside down letters, they kind of bracket off two verses in the Torah. And those verses are Vayehi ben Soa ha'aron, when the ark went out, was on the move. Vayomer Moshe kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha. And Moshe would say, as the Aron went out, as the ark that was normally kept in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the Holy of Holies, when they would travel, when they would go out, when they would go out to fight, when they go out to battle, when they go out to war. So Moshe would stir up the Jewish people and say, advance HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that all of our enemies should be scattered, and everyone should flee before you, v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu misanecha mipanecha. And then when the Aron stopped for a moment, the second verse says, Uvenucha Yomar Shuva Hashem Rivos Alpha Yisrael. But when the Aron stopped for a moment, Moshe would say again, return Hashem, come back, you who represent the Rivos Alpha Yisrael, the collective body of the Jewish people. And I was thinking at a time where, at least for myself, where we all feel a little bit upside down, that in between all of that upside downness are these two verses inscribed in our hearts, praying and davening for all the people in the front, via futzu oivecha, via nusu misanecha mipanecha, and then having moments where there's a halt, where there's a breath, and have a moment of uvenucha yomar, a halt, shuva Hashem rivos alpha Yisrael. And in all of our upside downness, when the Jewish people are upside down, I think we return to the letters that are upside down and what are inscribed in between those letters. The Vayehi ben Soa ha'aron, of going out with the ark, and also those pauses and those halts and that ability to take a breath and to daven and to make sure that we remind ourselves that we're anchored collectively as a Jewish people in something much greater than ourselves and any individual could ever imagine, the collective body of the Jewish people. There's a fascinating passage of Talmud in the Jerusalem Talmud in Shekalim, in the 6th chapter of the Talmud Yerushalmi in Shekalim. And this is also mentioned in Tosos and Eruvin. Tosos says something really eye-opening in Eruvin on page 63b, Samach Gimel Amud Beis, where normally in our minds, when we think of the Aron, when we think of the ark going out before the Jewish people, so in most of our minds, we probably, either because we grew up watching Indiana Jones and Raiders of the Lost Ark, or we grew up looking at pictures, the beautiful pictures of that golden Aron, that golden ark that kept the set of the tablets, the luchos, that was so central in the service of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. And that's the imagery that we normally have, and that was the Aron that followed the Jewish people into battle and into war. But the Yerushalmi in Shekalim, the Jerusalem Talmud, and also Tosos in Eruvin says something absolutely remarkable, that in fact the Jewish people had two arks. There were two separate Aronos. There were two different arks. There was one Aron that remained, according to this Tosos and according to Yerushalmi and Shekalim. That was the golden ark. That's the one that we're familiar with when we close our eyes and we think about what resided in the Holy of Holies, in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the inner recesses of our hearts, of our thoughts, of our prayers. That was the golden Aron, which kept the set of the tablets. But there was a second ark, and that was the ark that actually went out when they fought in battle. And that was an ark that wasn't made of gold, but it was made of wood. And inside of that ark was not the whole set of tablets that Moshe brought down to the Jewish people from God on Yom Kippur, but it was actually the first set of tablets that Moshe began bringing down, but eventually broke Le'enei Kol Yisrael, in the eyes of the entire Jewish people. He broke a set, and they took the shards of that set, and they kept them, and that was what they kept inside of this wooden ark when they went out to battle. It was an ark that when they went out to battle, it had all of the shards, collected all the pieces of that first set of tablets that was ultimately broken, and that stood before them and with them when the Jewish people went out to battle, when they went out to war. And I've been been thinking about just my own life and the collective heart of the Jewish people, that I feel like there have been moments where each of us have had two different aronos, two different arcs in our lives, that sometimes we need the arc of stability, we need the arc of the golden arc that stays inside of the Holy of Holies, that feels strong, that contains that whole set of tablets of the Luchos. And maybe those are the moments where we connect to the Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishaker, the eternity of the Jewish people. Maybe those are the moments where we strengthen in our own faith, in our own commitments, the wholeness in our own lives, the wholeness of the Jewish people, the resolve of the Jewish people. And there is another set that we each have had and each feel in these moments, and that is a second arc, the arc that is made of wood. Wood can absorb, and inside of that wooden, more vulnerable arc was a broken set of tablets, the broken luchos, the shivrei luchos, the shards that we keep with us when we don't feel whole, when we don't feel all together, when we feel most vulnerable, most at risk, most concerned, most upside down. And we take that out with us to be lochem, to fight, to represent the Jewish people and the Jewish nation and the Jewish land and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, our God and the God of our ancestors. And it's okay in these moments to feel the contents and the imagery of both of those arcs, both of those aronos. The aron that is golden, that is whole, that is stable, that is enduring, that remains no matter what. And an aron that is more vulnerable, that's more at risk, that's filled with brokenness, with precariousness. Because even those shards, even those shivrei luchos, we took them with us out to battle in those moments. And it's okay in these moments that you feel that vulnerability, but you also have that second aron that remains in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. There's a passage in Talmud that is something imagery. It's probably the most moving imagery that I've ever seen in any rabbinic text anywhere. Startling imagery. But it's a passage that I've been thinking about a lot, given all of the pain and the horrors that we've all been exposed to and that we've all seen. And that's a passage in Tractate Chagiga on page 5b, where the Talmud says, and I'll of course translate, but I want to read it in the original words because it's so powerful and it's so moving. It quotes a verse in Yirmiyahu in the 13th chapter that says, "Ve'im lo tishma'uha b'mistarim tivche nafshi, b'mistarim tivche nafshi, mipnei geva." But if you will not hear it, my soul wept in secret, b'mistarim tivche nafshi. My soul was weeping in secret, mipnei geva, for your pride. The Talmud says, Amar Rav Shmuel bar Inya mishmei de Rav. Rav Shmuel bar Inya said in the name of Rav, Makom yeshlo lahakadosh baruch hu umistarim shemo. There's a place that God has where God resides, and its place is called mistarim, which literally means in secret, but this is the name of a place. Mai mipnei geva. And what does it mean? Because of the pride of the Jewish people. Amar Rav Shmuel bar Yitzchak, B'mnei gavasan shel Yisrael shenitla behem v'nitna lagayim, because of the pride and the strength of the Jewish people that was taken from them and given to the other nations of the world. And Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmeni Amar B'mnei gavasan shel Malchus Shamayim. It's not talking about the pride and the strength of the Jewish people. It's talking about the pride of Malchus Shamayim, of the kingdom of heaven. And it's in that place, b'mistarim tivcha nafshi, that God cries. And then the Gemara asks a jaw-dropping question. Umi ika b'chia kame hakadosh baruch hu? Is it possible that God is crying? V'ha'amar Rav Papa, but Rav Papa said, Ein atzivos l'fnei hakadosh baruch hu. God transcends any emotion, any transience. God doesn't cry. There's no sadness by God. Shenemar, because the verse describes God, Hod v'hadar l'fanav, oz v'chedva bimkomo. There's honesty and majesty, strength. These are the things that we associate with God. Then the Gemara answers something remarkable. It says, Ha bevate gavoy, ha bevate varoy. Ha bevate gavoy. One is talking about the innermost chambers, and the other is talking about the outermost chambers. There are two different emotions, so to speak, that we can attribute to God. B'mistarim tivcha nafshi, in that place called mistarim, in that secret, in that quiet place, God is, so to speak, crying. And then there's another place where God is strength, of glory, majesty, and honor. And there are two different places. One is the inner chamber and one is the outer chamber. And I think the most fascinating dispute I've ever seen in the Talmud is which one is which. Is God crying in the innermost chambers or is God crying in the outer chambers? And in fact, if you look on the page of Talmud, there is a dispute in the commentaries about this. Rabbeinu Hananel one of the first commentaries on the Talmud, says that in the innermost chambers, God is strong. And outwardly, God is crying. But inwardly, essentially, there is always strength. There's always that attachment to the eternity, to the transcendence of God. But Rashi, on the spot, and the Maharal in Netzach Yisrael, in his work on mourning and the eternity of the Jewish people, even through tragedy, in the 9th chapter of Netzach Yisrael, one of the most beautiful works of the Maharal approaches this like Rashi and says it's the opposite. In the innermost chambers, God is crying, and in the outer chambers, it is with strength and with glory and with honor. And the Maharal says something really remarkable where he says this entire passage is really, it's not about God, it's about us. It's how we perceive God. And I believe that this very dispute, it's about us. It's about our own chambers within our own hearts. And I think over the last week, over the last few days, I think we've all had moments where we've gotten in touch with the different chambers within our hearts. If God, so to speak, is Liban Shel Yisrael, is the heart of the Jewish people, and God has these two chambers, one in which God is crying, B'mistarim tivcha nafshi, and one in which God is with strength and with honor and with glory. I think for the entire collective Jewish people, each of us have experienced these two chambers, where we're at one time feeling the tears, the pain, the anguish of the collective Jewish people, B'mistarim tivcha nafshi, those cries. And there's another chamber where we see Mika Amcha Yisrael, the glory of the Jewish people, the resilience of the Jewish people, the chesed, the kindness, the unity of the Jewish people. And these are two different chambers that can operate and exist simultaneously. It's the expansiveness and the beauty of the Jewish people and the way that we connect to our own eternity by attaching ourselves to Liban Shel Yisrael HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I think that dispute between Rashi and Rabbeinu Hananel, so which is which? What do we feel in our innermost chambers, and what are we, projecting outwardly, can change by the day, can change by the moment. There are moments that people are at work and we see, the world ignoring the plights of the Jewish people. We see still our enemies openly voicing and dismissing and being skeptical about the horrors that the Jewish people just experienced. And in those moments, some of us respond outwardly in our outward chambers with strength, with honor, with glory. Even in those very moments when we know inwardly we still remain crying. And there are other moments where we see the horrors of what's happening and we're crying and we feel so much despair and we feel so much brokenness. But even in those moments, we're able to tap into that strength. We're able to tap into that ozva hadar levusha. Even with all of the pain that's surrounding us, there's another chamber, an inner chamber, where we feel the Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishaker, where we feel the eternity of the Jewish people. And sometimes it's reversed, and sometimes that b'mistarim tivcha nafshi, the cries and the tears, overwhelm all the chambers. I have no doubt that we've all had moments like that. But everything that we're taking in as a people, everything that we're taking in as Amcha Yisrael, as the Jewish people, I think is this mix of strength, of Oz V'Hadar Levusha, of an aron that is golden, an aron that is strong, that has a whole set of luchos inside, that remains enduring in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, in the inner, most sanctified place in the entire world, and in the inner recesses of our hearts. And we have moments where all we have is the wooden ark, filled with the shivrei luchos, the shards, the remains of whatever we're able to hold on to. And sometimes it's mistarim tivcha nafshi, and sometimes it's oz v'hadar levusha, and sometimes the chambers are together, watching soldiers on the front lines dancing with sifrei Torah, watching soldiers on the front lines professing their faith, thanking people, watching soldiers thanking people. That always turns me upside down. The beauty, the expansiveness of the Jewish people, even in an Eitz Tzara, the people who we're thinking are turning back and thanking the Jewish people. It's an incredible time to live in, and it's a time where we need the expansiveness of our own hearts, inner chambers and outer chambers, tears and strength, b'mistarim tivcha nafshi, and oz v'hadar levusha. We need wooden arks and we need golden arks. We need whole sets of luchos and broken sets of luchos, all together, representing the majesty, the resilience, the privilege of being part of Amcha Yisrael, the eternal body of the Jewish people. The most important thing that I really want to share today is not my own voice, but the voices of Achenu B'nai Yisrael within Eretz Yisrael, our brothers and sisters in the land of Israel. There's been so much shared, and I think there's part of being a Jew is listening again and connecting more. and connecting, being nichnas l'tzarasin shel Yisrael, entering fully and completely, immersing ourselves into the experience of the Jewish people. Some of these experiences are harrowing, are part of that bimistarim tivcha nafshi, are part of the pain and the tears, and some of the experiences and the voices are part of the oz v'hadar levusha, of the strength and the majesty of the Jewish people. And we have a heart with many chambers, and it is a privilege to share these voices in this moment. I want to begin with words that were shared by Rabbi Dov Fendel. He originally shared them to the classroom of his cousin and our friend, Rav Daniel Feldman, a Rosh Yeshiva in Yeshiva University. It's his cousin. He shared this really right after everything took place and unfolded. Rav Dov Fendel is a Rosh Yeshiva of the Hesder Yeshiva in Sderot, which experienced some of the most brutal and horrific acts as this came out. And you could hear it in his voice. It was recorded via Zoom. The recording is difficult to hear, but it's important to hear. And these are the words that Rav Dov Fendel shared in that aftermath in our hearts and tefillos, berichok hamakam v'kirav halev, even with geographical distance, even if we may not be with him and next to him, we are with all the people of Eretz Yisrael. The words of Rav Dov Fendel, Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshivat Hesder in Sderot.
We thought that everything was going well. Hashem b'rtzoncha emata lari'oz, istarta fanecha, hayiti nival. Elecha Hashem ekra. I just came back from a levaya of a son of a friend of mine that he volunteered on Simchas Torah morning to go to the army. Unfortunately, he was killed. I just heard a story that I didn't know before. We have two boys in our yeshiva by the name of Amitai. One of them on Simchas Torah was an Ofakim, and he killed a terrorist. And another one, his first cousin, Amitai, who also is a student in our yeshiva and lives in Sderot and is the son of one of the rabbeim. He, Simchas Torah morning, was on his way to our yeshiva without a gun. Someone stopped him and said, "There's stuff going on, bring in your gun if you have a gun." So he took his gun, but instead of coming to our yeshiva, he decided to go to where his father was davening. And he went into the shul where his father was davening with the gun. And his father decided to go outside. He walked outside, he was shot by a terrorist. He ran home with a bleeding in his shoulder, and terrorists left him alone, went into the shul, and this boy, Amitai, started firing at him, and he basically saved the entire shul. So that's a tremendous zchut. 6:30 in the morning, we daven early on Simchas Torah morning, because that's the day that we go from house to house. And that's the day that we, from shul to shul. One of our boys went down as a medic, and he went to the area where the terrorists were. He didn't realize, but he came back running. He said, "They're shooting at me with a mug, with an Arab license plate, with a truck, with it's unbelievable." And I just said to Baruch Hanala, of course we stopped. We're Hesder Yeshiva, so we have a lot of guns in the yeshiva. So we made sure we protected ourselves, and then some guys ran down there, and one guy killed the terrorist. I took the entire area into a ghost town. We're not going to let them. We're going to turn it into a capital of Torah and Zionism. They're trying to destroy it. They're not going to keep up with the pace of all the building that's going on. They're trying to break that spirit, but they didn't realize that spirit is invincible and unbreakable. And we're going to make sure that we have renewed energies. We don't know exactly what Hashem wants from us. But we know what we have to do. We don't know why, but we know what, and we know how. And we're going to work hard to rebuild a tremendous spirit. I think we were the only people in the city that had hakafas. And hakafa, it says in the Sfarim, means that, in Hebrew, means that you buy with credit. Meaning that we plead to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we promise we're going to pay back. We're going to build more and more Torah, more and more tefillah. Meanwhile, singing throughout the day. Obviously, it was a very special type of singing, a singing of Oshia Samecha, a singing of Chamal, a singing of Rachem, a singing of Chasof Zohar Kochecha, singing Kilo Yitosh, singing So Ochila Lakel. It was real singing, and when we said Tehillim, it was almost as if David HaMelech wrote it for us. Almost every sentence was so relevant. And it reminds us of the Gemara Brachas that the Gemara says that the Amoraim walked in the middle of a wedding and they broke plates. And that's in the car. Tosa says that's a source of us breaking plates at weddings to make the simcha a deeper type of simcha. We continued singing, but with different words to the songs and words that were more meaningful. We also continued singing, and we made sure that it was a real tefillah, and we said Tehillim, and we know what our responsibility is. It was 30 very, very difficult hours, and we, together with the whole country, are mourning, but at the same time are strengthening our resolve to rebuild and to be as strong as possible, and to do everything not to let them have this victory of breaking our spirit.
This again was recorded on Monday morning on October 9th. It's really right after, and if you weren't able to hear, he quotes a verse in his opening words in Hebrew, a verse from Tehillim, the 30th chapter that we say in davening every morning, Hashem bertzoncha hemarta lahare oz. For you, God, when you were pleased, you made me firm like a mighty mountain. Histarta panecha hayisi nival. When you hid your face, I was terrified. Elecha Hashem ekrav yel Hashem eschanan. I called out to you, God, and to you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I made an appeal. Those were the verses that he began with. We should be able to really feel fully, to come back to that time of Hashem bertzoncha hemarta lahareyos, to feel that firmness and stability like a mighty mountain, rather than the histarta panecha hayisi nival, that you hid your face, and that feeling of being terrified. But that's where we are, and I want to share with you another testimony of somebody really incredible who I got to connect with via WhatsApp. I need to thank a friend and former guest, Bethany Mandel, who connected me to her. Her name is Naama. She was present during the attack at the music festival. Open up your hearts and listen to what Naama experienced.
I'm sharing what I've been through in the last 24 hours. Everything started around 6:15 a.m. We were at the dance floor, and missiles started to intercept above us. We ran to our vehicles with the little supplies we had on and started driving. The road was jammed, and everybody was in panic to get out. We started driving to the right, but we saw all the vehicles starting to U-turn, saying they're being shot at. We turned left, and the same happened there. We realized that we're stuck. By pure luck, there was an officer on the road, so I stayed behind him until he finished his phone call, and all he said was, run to the fields as fast as you can and as far as you can. And so it was. Hundreds of people, kids, in the average age of 20. We found ourselves running into the forest like partisans, but this time without any ability to fight. The ones who couldn't run or stayed at the festival had a different ending than we did. After a short time, we realized we're surrounded by terrorist squads, and there was nowhere to run to. All we could do was to hide. While running, I heard the bullets whistling all around and praying they won't hurt me. The sky was gray from all the missiles that wouldn't stop, and all I could hear was yelling, sometimes in Hebrew, sometimes in Arabic. We sent our location and waited to be rescued, hiding under a tree, barely covered, praying and hoping not to be seen. My thoughts started racing. What's worse, to die or to fall prisoner? I thought about my will. What should I say and what I didn't get to experience in my life? I thought about my family, and I thought about Israel and the IDF, how much I love the IDF. I thought about my big trip and my friends. I wanted to write to everyone how much I love them, no matter what will happen to me. But I felt like it would be determining my destiny. I talked to God. I haven't talked to him in many years. I promised I would keep the Shabbat and become religious. I made my peace with death. I'm sorry for the tough words, but that's what happened there. After 6-7 hours under the tree, with 2% on my friend's phone, a guy named Rami started honking at us and called us into his car. We crawled on the dirt road and got in the trunk. We started crying our hearts out. So many things went through my head. This guy Rami and another guy named Leon saved our lives and many more. 2 simple civilians took their cars and decided to go pick up people from the fields. I remembered again how much I love Israel. In one moment, everyone's united. We arrived to Patish. Everybody was so frightened. the sights we've seen, the voices we've heard. All that's left to do is trying to understand what we've been through. Hug your loved ones. I've never had more appreciation to my life. In my worst nightmares, I couldn't believe something like that would happen. I'm so grateful for the people who was there with me and got back home safe with me, and so upset for the ones who didn't. It would take a lot of time to process everything, and forgive me for not being graphic with the details. It's very hard to explain. Don't be ashamed to call for help. Take care of yourselves. It's impossible to go through this alone. I'm sending a big hug to all of our armed forces. I'm hugging everyone who was worried about me, wrote me and prayed for us. I'm hugging Michal and everyone else who I wouldn't survive this without them, and everyone who was there with us. Also Stephanie, Guy, Roy, Liri, and Ariel, who got home safe with me. Please share this for the world to see.
I was just very struck with her reaction from Naama, that in that place of being terrified, Histarta panecha hayisi neval, when you hid your face, I was terrified. And the next verse, Elecha Hashem akra, I called out to you, O Lord. And exactly what she said, I talked to God, which I hadn't done in many years. Wow. I talked to God, which I hadn't done in many years. And I think that a lot of us are having conversations and thinking about the preciousness of life, the preciousness. The word precarious means danger, and the word precious means something beloved, something that you cherish and hold on to. And sometimes it is in the times of most risk and most danger and most chaos that our eyes open to the preciousness and the privilege of our lives. And our hearts, obviously, and tefillos are with Naama. I had a friend in yeshiva when I learned in Baltimore. We go back a long way. You may know him. He is the founder of the Smichas Chaver program, which provides classes and training in halacha, not for rabbis, specifically not for rabbis, and is really a global movement. His name is Rav Elyada Goldvicht. He's a real friend, somebody I go back many, many, many years with. He's one of the sweetest people in the whole world that I know, always the biggest smile that lights up the entire room. And I heard something else that Elyada presented, and I reached out to him because Elyada has a remarkable but very scary but undoubtedly a privilege where Elyada serves in the army as part of the Chevra Kadisha. The Chevra Kadisha are the people who are in charge of burying bodies and giving the ultimate chesed shel emes, the ultimate, what's called a chesed shel emes, which a kindness of truth, is because it's something that can never be repaid. You do somebody a favor, so maybe one day you'll call that in. You do somebody who passed away, you do somebody who is deceased a favor, it is the ultimate chesed shel emes. And to serve in the Chevra Kadisha, not for somebody who passed away from old age, but for people who were murdered, brutally murdered al Kiddush Hashem, because they were Jewish, because they were Israeli, because they lived in the land in Israel, because they were friends of the Jewish people, because they were part of the Jewish people, to be killed al Kiddush Hashem and to do that kavod achron, that final act of honor to those people who were murdered, who were killed al Kiddush Hashem, is a supernal privilege. Tells the world a lot about what Amcha Yisrael, what the Jewish people are all about. It is our privilege to hear some first-hand testimony. I reached out to Elyada. He was busy, he was on a shift, you'll hear, but he was kind enough to open up his heart to us. This is the testimony and a little bit of a understanding of what exactly the work that he does, because I think it's important to understand what the IDF is all about. Is not, God forbid, just about death, but it's really about protecting life and honoring life. Our conversation with our friend Rav Elyada Goldvicht.
There's two front lines right now being battled in Israel. One is the actual physical front line, and one is the emotional, psychological front line. And the part of the emotional, psychological front line is making sure that our children are brought home to Eretz Yisrael. Let's just give you a little bit of a breakdown of the way the army works. So the army is incredible. We have a schus that we have an army that protects the Jewish people. And it's not just in Eretz Yisrael. If you remember throughout history, they go down Tebi, they leave they leave the borders of Israel to protect the Jew wherever he is in the world. Part of the army is also taking care of those who have fallen, and it is a top priority. Right now in the army, there are two fronts that the army is fighting. There's the one in the north and the south. They're fighting to protect the borders of Israel. They're fighting to protect Am Yisrael. They're fighting to protect the Jewish people. And then there's a second front, and that is to make sure that all those who were brutally killed and murdered and died al Kiddush Hashem are brought to a kvura, are brought to a proper kvura Yisrael, a proper way of being buried according to the Jewish law, and to being buried in the most respectful and dignified way. And this is very important both for the families, both for the psychology of the Jewish people, both for the mental state of the Jewish people. So when we work in the Chavra Kadisha of the army, what we try to do is really, we know that every minute counts, and that if we could identify from thousands of people who got killed, if we can identify them as quickly as possible, that's 1 minute where we're saving English for the family. There's families right now that don't know if their sons, daughters, father, mothers, children's brothers, sisters were taken captive, if they were murdered, if they're just missing. They don't know. And every minute that we can spare them that English, even if unfortunately they're going to hear the worst news of them losing a close relative, we take it very seriously, and we take it very with a heavy heart what we do. So part of the army is called the Pikud Olef, which is the home front, and then there's the Rabbanut. The Rabbanut deals mainly, one of their branches that they deal with, their Chavra Kadisha deals with the soldiers that got killed, and the Pikud Olef, which is the home front, which is the one that I'm under their branch, we deal with the civilian casualties, and there are hundreds of civilian casualties. I think it's already in the thousands. And as I mentioned, our job is to really try to identify those who got killed as quickly as possible so their families can know exactly who it is. And it gives the family great closure, I guess. I want to just walk you through a day. I'll walk you through today, what happened to me today. And this is already, I'm losing count of it. I think today is Wednesday. I don't know when you're going to be listening to this, but this is Wednesday. So the attack happened on Shabbos. We've been working around the clock on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and today's Wednesday. So we work 12-hour shifts from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's my personal shift. The Army works 24 hours. My personal shift is a 12-hour shift, and we move as quickly as possible. So we get there, and in the beginning, there are truckloads of refrigerated bodies that come, and we take them off one at a time, and we try to identify, we take fingerprints and try to make sure that everything is done in the most respectful and mechubadik way. And it's not easy. It's not easy to see the brutality that Hamas, Yimach Shemam have. You see the hate. You see the hate. I don't want to get into details, A, for the listeners, and B, for the kavod of the Mason, for the respect of those who got killed. But you see hate. You see it's not human. It's someone called them an animal. I think it's disrespectful to the animals to call them that they're animals. This is subhuman. Animals kill when they're hungry. I can understand that. It's barbaric. It's heartless. It's really something unfathomable. So we work round the clock, and we try as quickly as possible to get some identifying factors. Whoever served in the army, so the army already has your fingerprints, they have your DNA, they have everything. So they're able to, as quickly as possible, identify the body. Now, in Jewish law, when someone is killed because he's Jewish, so that's called being killed al Kiddush Hashem. That's being killed because he's Jewish and sanctifying God's name in his death. And the Gemara teaches us that someone who dies al Kiddush Hashem, ain't called beria omid b'mechitzasa. No one, when they reach the high heavens, when they reach heaven, there's a special place in heaven for the people who died because they're Jewish, who got murdered for their belief, or even not a belief, even if someone wasn't religious, but someone who got killed by the fact that he's Jewish according to halachic law and Jewish law and Jewish tradition. They have their own place in Shemayim, which means Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest rabbis, Maimonides, Nachmanides. Think of the greatest rabbi you ever heard of. They're not in the same place as these people who died al Kiddush Hashem. And when we're moving the bodies and when we're taking care of them, we understand this and we do it with the utmost respect. Today, I was speaking to a person next to me, and I told him that, in my opinion, the holiest place in Israel right now after the Kotel is where we're standing. We're standing in a place where thousands of people, their soul went up to Shemayim, and they're all collected here. We're in a room with thousands of people who died. And again, as we're trying to take the bodies out as quickly as possible, but to understand the awesomeness of who these martyrs are is something that's very important. Now, why does Jewish, wisdom and Jewish halacha put such a focus on the process of properly and respectfully burying an individual? So the reason, in my opinion, is because we believe in Tchias HaMesim. Our life here is much more than the few years we're on earth. It's eternal. And since it's eternal, so then the body itself, we believe, is going to come back to Tchias HaMesim, is going to be brought back to life in the end of days. And that's why we take utmost respect. And just a few halachos that I'll share with you that show this dignity that we have for the mace. So any part of the body, even blood that comes out, it needs to be buried. So if someone, God forbid, has a gunshot wound, which a lot of them have, so there's blood that comes out. So if there's blood on the floor, we take a napkin and we clean it up, and that gets buried with them. Every single drop, every single piece of them is buried in the utmost dignified way. A, for them, it's kindness for them, and two, for the family, that the family knows that we're dealing with them in the utmost respectful way. The second halacha that I think is a fascinating halacha. When a Jewish person passes away, when a person's grandfather, he lives till 100, 120, he passes away. So the Jewish custom is that there's a process called tahara. Tahara is that after a person passes away, they put him in a mikvah, and then they wrap him up, and then that's how he's buried. When someone dies, when someone is murdered because he's a Jew, there is no tahara process, meaning they get buried in their clothing, with their shoes on, with their socks on, with everything, just the way they are. And the Shach explains the reason that it's done is because like their image comes up to heaven, and hopefully it'll shake the heavens and the earth. It'll shake the heavens and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what do you want from us? God, Master of the world, what? Please, we see the kindness, we see the love, we made it back to the land of Israel, and we're getting closer to the final redemption. But why is this happening? And that's why it's done in such a way. So as I started our day, we work around the clock. We take the bodies off in the utmost respectful way, and we try to get them identified as quickly as possible. And then at the end of the day, what we do is we all stand in front of, I don't know how to describe this to you, but there are, I guess, like just canisters, or it almost looks like the back of a truck, like I don't know how to say it in English, like macholot. It's basically these long containers that have shelves. And there are hundreds of people that are there waiting to be identified after we took the identification. And we stand there and we say a parak of Tehillim, and then we ask for mechila, we ask for forgiveness. And what we tell them, what we say is, we're trying to treat you with the utmost respect, and we're doing it just so we can bring you to Kfura as quickly as possible. And please forgive us if when we were doing something, it wasn't in the respect that you deserve, knowing that you are someone who is on the highest level in Judaism. You're in Beria Omid b'Mechitzasim. No one stands next to you. No one is near you. Not Maimonides, not Nachmanides. You have your own place. We ask for Mechila and we say Kaddish. And then the next shift continues and they go. And the moment a body is identified, a moment they're able to synchronize fingerprints or whatever it is, they're numbered, we run to where they are, we take them out, and they go, the family is informed, we bring them out to Kfura as quickly as possible. And that can happen super fast, and it depends on, there's a lot of things that make the identification process run quicker, but we're literally huffing and puffing. I've been worked out like this in my entire life. And again, it's all because it's like the opposite of Hamas. Hamas doesn't respect not the life, not the death, not anything. They brutally murder men, women, children, and they don't care. And the Jewish people, we are of such high moral values and codes that even after death, we'll take a sponge and we'll make sure that every drop of blood is buried with a correct body. Every drop of blood is buried and brought to Kfura. That's something that Am Yisrael should know. It's something that if you've never heard these laws before, these halachas before, you should know how much the Jewish people respect every single Jew, every single neshama, even though we don't look alike. We're all different. We're all separate people. But at the end of the day, we're all the same. We're all one nefesh. Someone sent me an excerpt from a sefer of Rav Charlap, was the Rav here in Yerushalayim, and he said that the Jewish people are like we're one nation. And he says sometimes you walk around, you can't tell that we're one nation. But when one of us gets killed and our blood is spilled, so then every Jew around the world feels that. It's like cutting a limb off of your body. When you cut yourself as you're cutting a cucumber, you feel it and it hurts. And what Am Yisrael is going through now, what the Jewish people is going through now, I don't think there's a Jew in the world who doesn't feel the pain and the anguish. And that's incredible. It's unfortunate that it has to happen this way, but it's incredible to show the unity. That's more or less the day. Today, specifically, I had to go to a different part of the base, and there are where the civilians are waiting. That's where the families are waiting. That's where they're waiting for the past 3 or 4 days to get any news. Is my father, husband, wife, daughter, son, is he in Gaza being tortured by Hamas, or is he dead? Where is he? Is he in a hospital? Right, so it's packed with civilians, and if a body is identifiable and in good shape, so they'll take out a family member and they'll ask him to come also identify with their own eyes. And today I witnessed that, and to see the family shrieking and to hear them and to realize that every person, we dealt with hundreds of fallen, but every person is a family, is someone. It was really heartbreaking. It was really heartbreaking. That was my day, but my day wasn't over, because as I went home, someone sent a text message that there's a family who is a lone soldier whose parents just came in, and people should go visit Shiva. People should go visit them for Shiva. So I said, okay, my day in the Chapra Kadisha is over, but let's go pay a Shiva call. I drive there, and you walk in and you see a family that lost their son. And as I came in, so his platoon members were there, and they spoke about the bravery that he had, and how he walked in, and how he fought Hamas terrorists, and how he saved dozens of Jews by his bravery. And to sit there and make that connection between the people that we deal with and the people that, and actually hear the stories of who they were, is something that's incredible. And when I came and I sat there, I just told them, I said, listen, I work with the deceased afterwards from the Chavra Kadisha, and you should just know that we do everything in our power to show respect and kavod to the niftar, and everything is done al pi halacha, everything is done according to the Jewish tradition for thousands of years. Our nation is a nation that has unfortunately known Holocaust and pogroms and murders for thousands upon thousands of years. And unfortunately, we have a tradition of how to deal with the Mesim. And what I shared with them is that we did it all according to halacha. We did it b'kedusha v'tara, with holiness and with spirituality. And we did it with a sense of responsibility. We did it with a sense of a broken heart, but with the utmost respect that you can have for the niftar. And you saw that meant a lot to them. When a Jewish family knows that their loved one was taken care of in the best way possible, it gives minucha to the family and to the nation itself. The chief rabbi of the army just now came out with a psak that if chas v'shalom we won't be able to get through all the bodies until Shabbos, that we'll work through Shabbos, on Shabbos itself. Why is that? Because usually, if, like we said, an old man passes away on Shabbos, so the body is muktzah, you don't move it, or there's a lot of halachas, but you definitely don't move it around and try to identify it. Here he says we're at war. Every minute we can let a family know. Every minute it's the ruach of the nation that needs it in order to fight. The soldiers fighting war need to know that their brothers and sisters are taken care of. They need to know that their soldier friend that just died is going to be properly taken care of. And even Am Yisrael needs to know that. And wherever you are listening to this, you should know and really be proud to be a Jew. Should be proud to be a Jew for a million reasons, but this is just one small detail of it. The amount of value that we have to life shows you how much potential you have and what you could become and how great you could become. And that's why there's so much respect after life for that reason as well.
It's a real chesed shel emes, the ultimate kindness, the ultimate kavod, the ultimate honor that Elyada represents, of honoring life even after life, of remaining connected to life even after life, everything that the mercy and the Rachmanim b'nei Rachmanim, the mercifulness of the Jewish people in emulating the mercifulness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's everything that we are about and that we represent. And really a privilege to hear from him firsthand and just to understand the work that is happening, not just in battle, but in honoring those who have died al Kiddush Hashem, sanctified the name of God, through their life and through their death, really is a privilege. But as we mentioned at the outset, a lot of the stories are incredibly painful, and there's a lot that is quite uplifting. In our own 1840 team, our two closest members, my dearest friends, Sruli Fruchter, who really directs everything on the ground, all the logistics, all the contractors and staff that we have. He made Aliyah this past September, late August. I don't even remember when it was at this point, but very recently, a month or two ago, and he's in Eretz Yisrael right now. And I invited Sruli to share a little bit about what he's experienced.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sruli Fruchter. I'm the Director of Operations at 1840. And usually you won't hear my voice because I'm more on the back end of 1840. But I'm speaking now because 2 months ago I moved to Israel. And 2 months later, I'm sitting in the national grief and trauma of a terrorist massacre that slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. The thing that's most surreal to me, and I'll tell this as I recount what was happening, is my Shabbos morning versus the Shabbos morning for those in southern Israel. When I awoke at 6, I awoke to my alarm, and the Israelis in Sderot awoke to the sirens. That till 8:15, I was pacing around my apartment, relaxing on my couch, and they were running for their lives, barricading themselves in bomb shelters. And that sense of helplessness is overwhelming. It's something I can't even begin to think about. I can't process it. But at 8:15, when I was walking to shul, I heard sirens going off in Yerushalayim. And my initial thought was, classic being in the life of Israel, like all these Americans would be so, even though I was basically in Israel for barely 2 months, all these Americans would be so freaked out, but this is the reality. I don't know why, but it didn't register with me at the time that it's incredibly unusual and alarming if Jerusalem, has sirens going off. I live in Baca. That's not usually where sirens go off. It's much more common in the south, in Tel Aviv, in areas where Hamas is normally targeting. And I was thinking, should I be running to a bomb shelter right now? Should I get on the ground? It didn't really feel like there was panic in the air. I didn't know what to expect. And as I was walking, I actually passed by a grandmother and her grandson just strolling in the Yerushalayim streets, and I waved to them, said Shabbat Shalom, and moved on, and I kept walking. And when I arrived at the minyan, I was chatting with some other person. It didn't even register in my mind this was a big deal. I don't even think I mentioned it to anyone. But as the minyan went on, the sirens kept coming, and at some point we were just going up and down the basement steps to and from the bomb shelter, doing hakafos in the bomb shelter with a single light bulb that was accidentally left on Shabbos. At one point, one of the soldiers who was there, I don't know if he was currently serving, if he's in Miluim, I don't know the details, but he came back because he had went to go check his phone to see if the army needed him. And he comes back and he tells us, it's not good. I've heard there was someone killed and there's a hostage situation. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, it's so terrible. But nobody knew the extent of what had happened. But after Shabbos, after Havdalah, my roommate was checking his phone to see what was going on because we were all a little bit on edge. That uncertainty is unnerving. I asked him what had happened, and he looks at me and he says, 100 dead, 60 hostages. And my hand went over my mouth, and I said, what? I was speechless. I did not have any words. Those numbers were just so large. And, as we all know now, that number only continued to grow. Now the number is 150 hostages, 1,200 Israelis killed. I know there's a woman my age who her husband was killed. They were married for a little over a year. My sister's very close friend, her boyfriend's best friend was killed. I have a very close family friend whose cousin is a hostage. It's crazy how close this is. I think what the craziest thing about it, especially being in Israel, is that normally in life, when things happen to you, you walk through, I think, the days surrounding that with a certain disposition. Like, for example, if I got evicted from my apartment, when I'd go to the supermarket, that would be the lens that I interact with everything. So for everyone else in the supermarket, it's a normal day. And for me, it's a terrible day. I'm scared and I'm vulnerable. And in Israel right now, there's no lens that any particular person is wearing that is like, you are the only one who's stressed or traumatized or afraid of what's coming or grieving. Because if I stopped any person on the street and I asked them, how are you doing? They would know exactly why I'm asking that and what I'm referring to. And what I've been doing since is struggling. And I've tried to contribute. I've given blood at Magen David Adom, which is really wonderful to see. Hours-long waits of Israelis just wanting to show up and do what they can, packing food, shopping for soldiers. But I think the hardest thing, especially being here as a new Ole, is feeling so helpless in helping your country. That yes, I can go and give blood, and yes, I can pack up things, and yes, I can go shopping for soldiers, and yes, I can send messages, and yes, I can daven and do all these different things, but it all feels so utterly insufficient, like I haven't earned my share as an Israeli to really bear the brunt of what this means for the country, what this means for our people. And the hardest thing is that I want to appreciate the Achdus in Am Yisrael, and I want to appreciate the love of Klal Yisrael. But I don't want the videos of Jewish unity. I don't want the stories of inspiration. I don't want the comforting words. I want those 1,200, my 1,200 brothers and sisters back. I want Nathaniel Young. I want Shani Look. I want Yosef Gedalia. I want to go back to October 6th before death plagued us. And the problem is that I feel very strongly. I never knew an anguish like this before, and it is so, so difficult. When I gave blood, I turned to the medic. I asked him, do you have family or relatives who are in Miluim, who are reservists? And he responded, Betach, of course. It was such an obvious question that only a naive Oleg could ask. He starts listing off people in his family who are serving. And it's so hard to watch or to be here when you, your country and your people and your nation are suffering. But it is unbearably hard when you feel that there is nothing you can do that's enough to help them alongside them.
Even though it is really difficult for me to be in that place where I can see beauty and see things that are really wonderful with Am Yisrael right now, I do think that it's incredibly important to acknowledge that, especially from my own experience, the way people are showing up, and I know what's happening in America as well, but I'm in Israel, so I'll speak about Israel, are showing up in Israel like it's wartime right now, and we need everyone, all hands on deck. I'm in so many group chats to the point where I actually have to mute them because you can't even go about your day. Constantly new initiatives of packing food, packing supplies, going shopping, babysitting for women whose husbands are on Miluim, camps being created, day camps being created for children, everything. Everyone is showing up. And it's not just that the opportunities are being created, it's that they're being filled so quickly. The Jewish people coming together right now, and every single person across the globe feeling this collective pain and showing up and doing whatever they can and still feeling like I need to be doing more and delivering on that is one of the most extraordinary things that I've seen and is one of the things that I think is Mika Amcha Yisrael, and I'm really not the type of person who is walking around being like, oh my God, you give tzedakah, Mika Amcha Yisrael, or oh my God, you did this, Mika Amcha Yisrael. But seeing this right now, and it's incredible, and our morale can never be depleted or destroyed because we are all loving each other so strongly, and we're delivering on that in the way that's needed right now for this time.
I think the sentiment of Sruli is so incredibly moving. Not everybody can serve on the front lines. Not everybody can serve in the army. We don't all have that privilege, but we're all looking, how could I help? How can I help? What's next? What's next? We're all serving in this cause of protecting and uplifting the Jewish people. If I can't serve, let's donate blood. If I can't donate blood, let me donate money. If I can't donate money, let me organize people or donating goods. Whatever can be done across the world, seeing me ka'amcha Yisrael, who is like you, the Jewish people across the nation. What the Talmud in Brachos says is written inside of the tefillin of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In our tefillin, we praise God. What's written in God's tefillin? And the Talmud in Brachos says, so to speak, obviously God is no body, but the imagery of what is the purpose of all of this, that in God's tefillin says, Mi ka'amcha Yisrael, who is like you, the nation of the Jewish people, representing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being the manifestation and embodiment of godliness in this world. What a privilege. And we're seeing so many uplifting stories, so many people going out, how could I pitch in, how could I help? One of those people, somebody you're familiar with, we thank her at the end of every single episode. It is our dearest friend, Denah Emerson. Denah went to Israel like many for Sukkot, and she, I don't want to even call it stuck there. She's not stuck there. She's there. She's staying there right now. And she's been incredible that even with everything that's going on, every free moment, she's been the one who's been editing. There's so many changes that we had to make, and she's been there in every moment. And every moment that she's not helping on 1840, she's going and she's doing chesed. She's packing for people and doing chesed for the Jewish people. It's really our privilege to hear a little bit. We always hear the thank you to Denah. And now's the time, let's hear directly from our dearest friend, Denah Emerson.
This is our dearest friend, Denah Emerson, speaking to you from Yerushalayim. Like so many people, I came to Israel for Sukkot with my family, and things have changed real fast. I'll tell you what Shabbos morning was like for me. I woke up to the sirens, and I came out of my room like, what is that noise? And my brother who lives here, he immediately turned me around and pushed me into the bomb shelter and said, go. And that's when I knew something was wrong. We spent the rest of the day in and out of the bomb shelters, trying to make things normal and light for the kids, hearing some reports of what was going on, but we didn't know the full extent of it. As the story and the trauma has continued to unfold, we here at 1840 find it incredibly meaningful and powerful to be with you, our audience. So that's been my challenge. We always operate at a breakneck pace. I'm used to editing as fast as possible on trains, on planes, wherever I am. But this has been different because we have to get things out there and things are changing constantly. And in the midst of all that, I would be editing and the sirens would go. And I'd run into the bomb shelter and continue editing there and wait for the all clear. And between the sirens, I'm watching Red Alert on my phone and it is nonstop. And I'm watching for places where my family is, and I'm watching for places where my friends are. And I'm watching our whole country under attack. And then I have to focus again. And the other day, I went to go work in a cafe because I needed to be out of the apartment and I needed to be amongst people. And I'm sitting there editing a guest who you will have heard already in this episode, Elyada Goldvicht. And he's telling the story of the incredible work he's doing, and I am bawling. I'm sitting there at Roladin Cafe and I am bawling. And I don't leave because I have this work that I have to do and I need to be there with our people. And in the moments where I'm not editing, where I'm not trying to get 1840 out to all of you, I'm doing what I can. My family and I, under the incredible direction of my sister, we have at this moment raised over $20,000 for supplies for soldiers, which includes food and hygiene and basic necessities, but also, ceramic vests and backpacks and phone chargers and paratrooper supplies and tzitzit. And we've sent emergency funds down to Sderot and Netivot and other communities in the south. And we've contributed to food and toys for displaced families and food and toys for families of soldiers and so much more. And I'll tell you, every time we went out to the store and we would be buying $1,000 worth of supplies because that's what fits at the car at any one time, we discovered there would be 5 other groups doing the exact same thing. And the place where I go to help, where I go to pack things for soldiers and displaced families, in just our little depot, we've packed over 5,000 packages for soldiers, and I don't even know how many for displaced families. And that's just one of so many happening all around Jerusalem, happening all around the country, and even around the world. I've seen the incredible pictures and videos from the 5 towns, from Teaneck, from LA, London, all over, where our nation is just collecting duffels and planes worth of supplies to send over here. And it is incredible to behold. I've been trying to focus on what our nation is able to accomplish, on the way that we look out for each other, the way that we are responsible for one another and take that seriously. And as long as I'm here, as long as my flights continue to be canceled, I understand that I have both the obligation and the privilege to be able to help on the ground. And despite what we're experiencing right now, despite how terrifying it is, how tragic it is, how painful, I feel so incredibly lucky to be a part of our nation.
And these stories, both that go above and beyond and make the most transcendent, the most difficult, the most unimaginable circumstances, but make people that are rising to the occasion throughout the world, to make that almost instinctive, that we tap into our instinct as a people, is something that is so heartening. It is heartening because it reminds you that each of us is not alone. Each of us is part of this collective body that stretches through generations, that is Amcha Yisrael and the Jewish people. Let's listen to another story of just such uplifting chesed, of everybody chipping in, everybody working together to uplift the Jewish people.
I'm Gedalia Zemel. I served in the Rabbanit Corps in Bad Echad. I finished my service 3 or 4 years ago, and now I'm serving in the Rabbanit for a Gedud, a unit in Pikud HaOref. I made Aliyah about 7 or 8 years ago to Yeshivat Har Etzion, where I did Hesder and a 6th year. So I've been in Israel for about 7 or 8 years. I've said to a couple of people now that I started off, I definitely felt a certain panic, anxiety that I think everybody else felt as well. And then I realized when I arrived in Beersheba to begin my reserve service that we kind of have a choice. We can either be sad later or panic now. I'd rather do now and be sad later about everything that's happened and save the panic. We've taken a loss. We have to now pick up, and obviously the families won't necessarily pick up, but the country as a whole has to pick up, because if we don't go into this optimistically, I don't know how we'll make it to the other side. I'll share that which one of the civilians in Beersheba who came to visit us in Turner Stadium said to us the first night. He gave a Dvar Halacha by Marav, and he said that the Lashon of the Rambam, the language of the Rambam, with regards to a war, is that at a time of war, a person can't have fear. A person has to have absolute faith, and when a person has absolute faith in God, then they're promised that God will take care of them. And that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody's going to come back from this. It means that we have a chance to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that we have not served Him in a long time, and to a certain degree in this capacity possibly ever.
Next, we're going to hear from Tania Hammer. She opened up her home to the entire community to collect and pack supplies for soldiers. You'll hear the crowd in the background because there's been a constant crowd showing up to do this incredible work. Another example of Mika Amcha Yisrael, who is like the Jewish people, opening up our homes for Achenu B'nai Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael.
I'm a regular Jew from Sydney. I left Sydney in 1990 and moved to New York. I wanted to make Aliyah for a long time. Finally, in 2016, I did. I landed in this gorgeous apartment with a massive garden and a mirpeset, and I thought to myself, well, this is not really my apartment, this is everybody's apartment. And I resumed my inviting guests for Shabbat, and it's been wonderful to share my apartment, my mirpeset, with everybody. Now, what happened on Sunday was, it was Yom Tov in Chutz La'aretz, but we had the news that people were massacred. Our fellow Jews living in Eretz Yisrael were massacred. 700 and counting. And I was horrified and broken, just like anybody else. On Shabbat, when I heard the siren, I did something that I very rarely do. I looked at my phone because we never have sirens in Jerusalem. I looked at my phone and there was a siren, then there was another siren, and I said something's wrong. And somebody was hanging out in our vestibule, and I went out to see what was happening, and she said, "Tanya, come inside. I'm watching the television." And sure enough, we saw that Hamas had infiltrated Israel and the terrorists were on a rampage. And it was just horrifying. So on Sunday, which wasn't our Chag anymore, I called my friend and I said, "Barbara, we've got to do something." And she said, "Well, what are we going to do?" I said, "Let's make some bags for Chayalim. Let's go to the pharmacy, we'll buy some essentials, and we'll put a letter in the bag to say that we love them. We'll find out who's going to an army base." And we went to Adika Pharmacy and we bought 100 pieces. We bought deodorant, toilet paper, shampoo, soap, things that people need to get on with their lives. For the women, we bought feminine products. I thought 50 would do. She said, "Let's buy 100. I came home and I set everything up and I asked on a WhatsApp group of my singles friends who wants to join. And before I knew it, I came home at 10:30. By 1 o'clock, I had 5 people here who said, "What can we do to help?" So one person put it on another WhatsApp group and another person put it on another. And sure enough, by 8 p.m., we had over 1,000 bags. People went shopping. They just wanted to be a part of it. They just wanted to do something. It was the most incredible, visceral experience that I've had, that doctors, lawyers, and everything in between, accountants, ganenets, you name it, they came to my house to write cards to Chayalim, to pack soaps and feminine products, to just do something. It was a painful situation that we were in. I got messages, another Chayal died, another family, another person at the border killed, and it was horrifying. And here they were in my garden packing soaps and shampoos to send to the people in the base. And I was so warmed by that response. I mean, what are we doing? We're packing toilet paper and shampoo. You can give that to anyone. Give it to a monkey to do. But a monkey doesn't feel what we felt. We felt as Olim, where do we fit into this picture? Where are we in Israel when our friends' children are going out to war? And we heard this one's going to war and that one's going to war and this one and that one. And these are our dear friends' children. They're not sleeping at night. And I thought, okay, we've got to do this on Monday as well. And Monday turned into Tuesday and Tuesday turned into Wednesday, which is where we are now. And we've made over 5,000 packages of love. And what's most extraordinary is that, we hear statistics, we hear data. It started off with 700, then it turned into families and the people in the, at the party on Friday night. Innocent, beautiful people who just wanted to have a nice Simchat Torah party, and they're gone. They're just gone. Boom. They're not here anymore. And my response was, I want to better that statistic with something positive. I want to get that scale of justice and make the love the center of this campaign, and the respect that we have for our Chayalim and the devotion that they have for us. They're fighting for all of us, and it's not just the people in Israel, it's all over the world.
Next, we're going to hear from Jeremy and Emily Tibbetts. They're the Jerusalem OU JLIC couple who are working on behalf of the OU and coordinating chesed on the ground in Israel for Achenu B'nai Yisrael in Israel. Here we hear from Jeremy and Emily Tibbetts.
It's been really crazy. Basically, Saturday morning, Simchat Torah, we had davening in our apartment. There was an azakah in the morning and a siren in the morning. And in Jerusalem, that almost never happens. We thought that it was like a fluke or an accident. Somebody leaned on a button. But then it kept happening throughout davening. And, people were coming into tefillah, starting to say things like, we're hearing all these crazy reports. Our neighbors are telling us things. Somebody came and said they closed all the shuls in the area. We were like, okay, what should we do? We were trying to figure that out. But really, from that first siren until Sunday at noon, our main thought was we're a community. We just want to make a space where people can be together, can not feel like they're home alone, looking at bad news, waiting for bad news to come. And Sunday morning, us and I think so many of our community members started to feel like we should really do something. So at first, we weren't really sure exactly what to do, but then it seems like the whole city just turned into this big effort and initiative to help out. And so there were hundreds and hundreds of drives that were opening up. There were people bringing food to soldiers. There were families that were starting to come up that needed help and support, supplies that needed to be moved around. And we're a community, we're not an aid organization, but it was really all hands on deck from everybody in the community. And we started just doing anything we could. To date now, we've packed over 2,000 meals that have gone all over to soldiers, to families that came in, all that kind of stuff. We've facilitated the distribution of we're estimating 50,000 shekels worth of supplies. That's things for soldiers in the army, everything from, sleeping bags to clothing. Soldiers basically went to Miluim and had nothing with them. And at the same time, now what we've started to pivot to more is really trying to support families that are coming up. I mean, we just in the past 24 hours have been put in touch with 5 or 6 families that are coming up from Ashkelon that just basically ran and didn't know where they were going until they ended up getting in touch with us. We just came back from it an hour ago. We ran like a camp JLIC, we called it, where we did it yesterday. We had 20 kids that basically a bunch of them had come just from Ashkelon. And basically the first place they came was, thank God, we had a very generous community member who opened up their home and had like a pool party for these kids. And then today it was closer to 50 or 60. Wow. And so next week we're trying to figure out if it's going to be a need as well. But basically at every moment, there's people now who are starting to turn to us. People are randomly calling me or Emily and just being like, hey, we have this need. Can you help? And there's so much to do. And I think we just feel really blessed to be part of a community that really hundreds of people came together to just be like, I want to be a part of it.
To be honest, I feel like Jeremy and I are super lucky to be able to be in this position because helping is all anybody wants to do right now. Like, I don't feel like we're special. I don't feel like we're doing, like, everyone around me on my Instagram, I just see baking things for soldiers, cooking, gathering. Every single story, everything that I'm looking at is everybody just trying to do the same thing. And because we are like very, very lucky to be in this position with JLIC, we just have the capacity. Like, this is our job. Like, this is really kind of how our role has taken us here. Suddenly, like, this work is just so crucial. Like, it's so relevant. And, there's a reason that, like, the house has just been totally packed and that people have been coming in and out. And, like, a lot of that is just this deep desire to be together, to be doing really anything that we feel like can make some sort of impact in the face of this horrific tragedy. And I don't feel like I have the strength to be doing it, but I just feel so blessed to be able to be doing it anyway.
One of the things that's been really amazing is just to see the way that also our community, especially people who are young Olim, are wanting to show up and support some of this. I mean, we have people who joined our community who we already knew from the JLIC network in America, who some of them got to Israel 30 days ago, a little more, a little bit less. And so for them, this is sort of the rudest welcome a person could have. I think we felt above all that we didn't want anybody to feel alone. That was always kind of our initial priority going into what this week was going to look like. Certainly, it's shifted as we found out there is so much that we can offer. But it's just amazing, again, to see people who, some of them have been in Israel for 5 or 6 years, some of them have been in Israel for 1 or 2 years, some people have been in Israel even for a couple weeks, have just opened up and just wanted to give and to support. We'll put out calls all the time in the WhatsApp group. There's these soldiers who need this. There's this family who needs this. In an hour and a half, we need to get 20, family members from Ashkelon dinner tonight. And the amount of people who are, I'll cook it. I'll drive it over. I'll check on them. Can I bring them art supplies? Just constantly people just looking at what they have. And instead of saying, how can I use this to make myself feel better about what's going on? Instead looking outward and saying, how can I help somebody else who's in need with what I have?
One of the most powerful interviews I ever did was with Rabbanit Rachelle Fraenkel after she lost her son Naftali, who was kidnapped and murdered by terrorists in 2014. It's almost 10 years ago. But we interviewed her in 1840. It's worth listening to the entire interview. Incredibly powerful. She said one thing I want to share and leave with you at the end over here. Let's listen to, this is Rabbanit Rachelle Fraenkel.
In Israel, often if something tragic would happen, like a young person would die, people would come over to you in the Shiva. And I'm not talking about myself, I'm talking about the general Israeli experience. They would put a hand on your shoulder, look in your eye and say, Tiyu chazakim, be strong. And I feel like yelling, I don't yell, I just come and whisper in the ear, don't be strong, be flexible. And to me, it means make room in your life for the pain, for the weeping, for missing. It's not going to go away. It's going to last, and it's going to stay with you. And definitely have room in your life for that. But also have room for the joy, for the blessing, for the brachot that are going to grow over time. And there's a certain type of flexibility that I think one can develop when they don't expect themselves to just be rigidly strong. Okay, we're strong, great. Be human, okay?
And I think her feeling that there are times where we have to be chazakim, and there are times that we need to be strong, chazak, and there's times that we need to be flexible, we need to be soft. We need that golden aron, the aron shel zahav that's in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and we need an aron of eitz. We need a chamber where we cry, and we need a chamber where oz v'hadar lavusha. We need a chamber where we remind ourselves of the enduring faith of the Jewish people, of Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishaker, and we need a chamber where we're nichnas, where we enter in the tzarasm of Klal Yisrael. And one of the great privileges of being a part of the Jewish people, of connecting to the Jewish people, is seeing a family unfolding through generations to realize, in the words of Rabbi Sachs, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, that in every Jew, remaining a Jew, within each of us is a story of 100 generations that live inside of all of us, and continuing in that journey and having come this far and perpetuating the story of the Jewish people, the most moving story in the annals of mankind, is truly a privilege. And we continue to stand together with Achenu B'nai Yisrael, Hanasunim Batzara Ubashivya, Ha'omdim Bein Bayamu Bein Bayabasha. We continue to stand together with our brothers and sisters, those who are in pain, those who are captured, those who are injured, families that are grieving and mourning. We stand together as one family, one people, resilient, enduring, continuing to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that we may see the revealed redemption before our eyes, that we may know of no more tears and no more pain, and that the Shomer Yisrael HaMisuratza Berachamim U'Mispayis B'Tachanunim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should hear our tefillos, should accept our tefillos, should continue to protect Jews in the Jewish land of Israel and throughout the world, and may we see a revealed Geula B'mheira B'yameinu. Amen.
Yisrael Shemo Eretz Yisrael V'al Yovad Yisrael